So back to recording again. I'm at the end of page 13. You put your hoof in it now. What did you say that for? Okay. Well, I think I said previously, Buck Mulligan is more or less saying to Stephen de Dallas, you put your foot in it. More or less saying you shouldn't have said that. What did you say that for? Because bit ungentlemanly like, asking about the sayings, will I get paid for them, so on and so forth. Next line. Well, Stephen said the problem is to get money from whom? From the milkwoman or from him? It's a toss-up, I think. Stephen Dallas said if they're looking for a loan of money, who are we going to get from? Are we going to get from the milkwoman or from Haynes? Excuse me. It's a toss-up. It's like tossing a coin. It's a toss-up. That's pretty self-explanatory. Next line. I blow him out about you, Buck Mulligan said, and then you come along with your lousy leer and your gloomy Jesuit jibes. I blow him out about you, Buck Mulligan said. What he's saying there is I blow him out about you. He's more or less saying I boost you up, Stephen de Dallas, with Hines. I blow him out about you. I build you up, more or less, and then you come along, and you blow it, and then you come along with your lousy leer. Great line, great way of describing that. With your lousy leer and your gloomy Jesuit jibes. He's kind of poking fun there at the Catholic Church, which Buck Mulligan, which Joyce liked to do a lot in his writing, as everybody knows, I think. Next line. Buck Mulligan sighed tragically and laid his hand on Stephen's arm. From me, Kench, he said. Okay, let me go back there a minute. I blow him up about you, Buck Mulligan said, and then you come along with your lousy leer and your gloomy Jesuit jibes. I see little hope, Stephen said, from her or from him. I see little hope in getting any money from either the Mick lady or this Haynes fellow. Next line. Buck Mulligan sighed tragically and laid his hand on Stephen's arm. From me, Kent, he said. From me. You could get it from me, he's probably saying. In a suddenly changed tone, he added, to tell you the God's truth, I think you're right. Damn all else they are good for. Why don't you play them as I do? To hell with them all. Let us get out of the kip. Just want to stop there for a second. 42. Okay. So Buck Mulligan is speaking here. He says, to tell you the God's truth, I think you're right. Damn all else they are good for. Meaning the milk lady and Haynes. Why don't you play them as I do? Why don't you play them as I do? Why don't you, that's pretty self-explanatory, I think. To hell with them all. To hell with them in the world, whatever. Let us get out of the kip. Let us get out of this building. Next line. He stood up, gravely, ungirdled. Girdled is like horse. You girdle a horse, you tie his saddle and all that, I think. Ungirdled is the opposite. Ungirdled, and disrobed himself of his gown, saying resignedly, Mulligan is stripped of his garments, so he's getting dressed. He emptied his pockets onto the table. There's your snot rag, he said. Now, this happens a lot in Ulysses. There's your snot rag, that means there's your handkerchief. So, previously, when he wiped his razor with the handkerchief, he shoved it he put it in his pocket, and now he's emptied his pockets, and there's your snot rag, there's your handkerchief. Things like that happen a lot in Ulysses, and they pop up later on, and that's a good example there. He put Stephen Dallas's handkerchief into his pocket, and he says, "There's your snot rag," he said. And putting on his stiff collar and rebellious tie, colourful, I would say, he spoke to them He spoke to them. He spoke to them, chiding them. He spoke to them. He's like speaking to his collar, his tie. He spoke to them, chiding them, and to his dangling watch chain. He's also talking to his watch chain. Just saying anything. His hands plunged and rummaged in his trunk, while he called for a clean handkerchief. So he's plunging, he's rummaging in his trousers and pockets and all that, and he's probably saying, where's me handkerchief, or he's calling for a clean handkerchief. Agent Bite of Inuit. Yes, now this Agent Bite of Inuit has appeared again. Excuse me. Agent Bite of Inuit has appeared again. So this is a saying that Buck Mulligan just says. Like anybody would have their own sayings they might just say out. So this is a saying that's that Buck Mulligan says. Agent Bite of Inuit means nothing really. So here it's again. He said it again, and no doubt he'll say it more. God will simply have to dress the character. God will simply have to dress the character. He's talking to himself. I'll simply have, I want puce gloves and green boots. Contradiction. Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. Mercurial Malachi. A limp black missile flew out of his talking hands. Now let me just go back on that paragraph again. He's basically talking to himself here. He's just dressed. He's getting dressed and he's talking to himself. His hands plunge and rummage in his trunk while he called for a clean handkerchief. Agent Bite of Inuit, he says. God will simply have to dress the character. I want and he's saying this out loud, I think. I want puce gloves and green boots. Contradiction. Yes, that's great writing. Puce gloves would mean some well-to-do person, obviously. Green boots, like I think Wellington boots would be, he's probably referring to one rich, one kind of not so rich. It's a contradiction. If you're wearing puce gloves and green boots, it would be a contradiction. And he's still speaking to himself. Do I contradict myself? Very well then, I contradict myself. Miracle Malachi. This is a great line here. A limp black missile flew out of his talking hands. Now I remember the first time I read that, when I read Ulysses first, over 15 years ago. When I was in New York, and I remember reading and saying, yes, I know what that is. That's brilliant writing. Just think about it. He's getting dressed and he says, a limp black missile flew out of his talking hands. A limp black missile. He obviously threw his hat. He threw it like you throw a frisbee. Like he threw it, and he's talking hands. Like his hands are talking, if you know what I mean. A limp black missile flew out of his talking hands. He just tossed his hat like a frisbee across the room. Yeah, and here's the answer here. And there is your Latin Quarter hat, he said. Buck Mulligan has said to Stephen de Dallas. So he tossed the hat to Stephen de Dallas. It's great writing, of course. Next line. Stephen picked it up and put it on. Haynes called to them from the doorway. Haynes at the doorway. Are you coming, you fellows? Next line. I'm ready, Buck Mulligan answered, going towards the door. Come out, Kench. You have eaten all we left, I suppose. Resigned, he passed out with grave words and gait, saying, well nigh with sorrow. Now, I just want to read that again. I'm ready, Buck Mulligan answered, going towards the door. Come out, Kench. He's Stephen Dallas is lagging behind. You have eaten all we left. He's more or less saying you've eaten all any food we left in the plate. You're eating it now. I suppose. Resigned, he passed out with grave words and gait, saying, well nigh with sorrow. Just something he's probably said out loud, doesn't really mean anything. Next line. And going forth he met Butterly. And going forth he met Butterly. That could be just Buck Mulligan saying a line that came into his head. That's all, I think. Next line. Stephen, taking his ash plant from its leaning place, followed them out, and as they went down the ladder, pulled to the slow iron door and locked it. He put the huge key in his inner pocket. Should I read that again? Stephen taking e dash plant. Taking e dash plant is walking stick, which is actually not a walking stick. It's probably just a branch of a tree. An ash plant, it's a branch of an ash tree. It's a common expression here in Ireland. When you say ash plant, it would be like a branch, like a branch of an ash tree. So, a Stephen Tickney's ash plant, which is it's basically a man-made walking stick made from a branch of an ash tree. From its leaning place, it was leaning against the wall or whatnot. Followed them out, and as they went down the ladder, now they're going down a ladder. Now we know this is a tower, so they're going down a ladder. Pulled to the slow iron door, it's an iron door, and locked it. He put the huge key in his inner pocket. He put the huge key. Yes, there would be a huge key, I'm sure, to a door like that. At the foot of the ladder, Buck Mulligan asked, "Did you bring the key?" Next line. "I have it," Stephen said, preceding them. Next line. He walked on. Behind him he heard Buck Mulligan club with his heavy bath towel the leader shoots of ferns and grasses. That's this great writing there. Let me read that again. He walked on, as Stephen de Dallas. Behind him he heard Buck Mulligan club with his heavy bath towel. So Buck Mulligan is carrying a heavy bath towel for his morning swim, obviously. And he's basically swatting the leader shoots of ferns and grasses, so that you can nearly visualize they're walking through grasses and ferns. And Buck Mulligan says the next line, "Down, sir, how dare you, sir?" Visualize like a Spanish bullfighter. "Down, sir, how dare you?" Things like that. Next line. Haynes asked, "Do you pay rent for this tower?" Self-explanatory. Next line. 12 quid, Buck Mulligan said. So they paid 12 quid, £12. Next line. To the Secretary of State for War, Stephen added over his shoulder. So, to the Secretary of State for War, that's who they paid the rent to. Stephen added over his shoulder. So he must have just looked back or over his shoulder. This great imagery there, anyways. They halted while Haynes surveyed the tower and said at last. So they all stopped and they looked back at the tower. "Rather bleak in winter time, I should say. Martello, you call it." So now we know the name of the tower is Martello Tower. It's called this tower is and yes, it would be rather bleak in winter time, I'm sure, by the sea. I should say Martello, you call it. Next line. Billy Pitt had them built, Buck Mulligan said, when the French were on the sea, but ours is a omphalos. Billy Pitt had them built, Buck Mulligan said. So a character in history called Billy Pitt. I don't know much about Billy Pitt, to be honest. Had them built. He could have been Billy Pitt. Could have been some English general or not general, but some ruler, some English person was, because England ruled Ireland for like 800 years, and at that time, I'm sure England were ruling when Billy Pitt was about, so he was an English whatever in Ireland. Had them built, Buck Mulligan said, when the French were on the sea, so the French would be thinking about invading. So they built these towers, lookout towers. But ours is omphalos. I don't know what that means. It's Latin. It could be Morrison saying it's the best, one of the best of them or something. Next line. What is your idea of Hamlet? Haynes asked Stephen. So Haynes is asking Stephen, what do you think of Hamlet? What's your idea of Hamlet? No, Buck Mulligan shouted in pain. I'm not equal to Thomas Aquinas and the 55 reasons he has made to prop it up. Wait till I have a few pints in me first. So Buck Mulligan is basically saying, no, I don't want to hear about it. Shouted in pain. I'm not equal to Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas, I think, was a saint, Catholic saint in the past. I'm not equal to Thomas Aquinas and the 55 reasons he has made to prop it up. So maybe Thomas Aquinas loved Hamlet. Wait till I have a few pints in me first. Wait till I have a few pints of beer in me first, and then I'll be able to listen to this. Next line. He turned to Stephen, saying as he pulled down neatly the peaks of his primrose waistcoat. That's he turned to Stephen. That's Buck Mulligan turned to Stephen, saying as he pulled down neatly the peaks of his primrose waistcoat, which is great imagery there again from Joyce. Next line. You couldn't manage it under 3 pints, Kinch, could you? You couldn't manage it under 3 pints. Buck Mulligan more or less saying to Stephen of Dallas there, you couldn't manage under 3 pints. You couldn't manage it under 3 pints. More or less saying, could you tell the story, I think, while we have 3 pints or something along them lines. Next line. It has waited so long, Stephen said listlessly. It can wait longer. Is kind of explanation of Hamlet, I would say. Next line. You pique my curiosity, Haynes said amiably. Is it some paradox? Next line. So Haynes has said this. You pique my curiosity, Haynes said amiably. Is it some paradox? They're trying to figure out what Hamlet is all about. Buck Mulligan, next line. Buck Mulligan said, we have grown out of wild and paradoxes. It's quite simple. He proves by algebra that Hamlet's grandson is Shakespeare's grandfather and that he himself is a ghost of his own father. Humour from Joyce here again. Next line. What, Haynes said, beginning to point at Stephen. He himself? Next line. Buck Mulligan slung his towel stolewise round his neck, and bending in loose laughter said to Stephen's ear. Now Buck Mulligan slung his towel stolewise. I think a stole is like a collar a priest, Catholic priest wears stolewise. So he wrapped the towel around his neck, and bending in loose laughter said it to Stephen's ear. O shade of Kinch the elder, Japhet in search of a father. Next line. We're always tired in the morning, Stephen said to Haynes, and it is rather long to tell. That's pretty self-explanatory. Stephen Delsa is saying this, we're just too tired in the morning to go into a long discourse about trying to explain Hamlet and so on and so forth. Next line. Buck Mulligan, walking forward again, raised his hands. The sacred pint alone can unbind the tongue of the Dallas, he said. The sacred pint of beer alone can unbind the tongue of the Dallas, he said. He just said that out loud, probably, you know. I mean to say, Haynes explained to Stephen as they followed, this tower and these cliffs here remind me somehow of Elchinor. And then that beetles o'er his base into the sea, isn't it? So I mean to say, Haynes explained to Stephen as they followed this tower, and these cliffs here remind me somehow of Elchinor, the beetles, and he sings like half a line of poem or something, some ballad, something like that. That beetles or his base into the sea, isn't it? Next line. Buck Mulligan turned suddenly for an instant towards Stephen, but did not speak. In the bright, salient instant, Stephen saw his own image in cheap, dusky morning between their grey attires. Now, this is this line here now is, let me read that again. Buck Mulligan turned suddenly for an instant towards Stephen, but did not speak. In the bright, salient instant, Stephen saw his own image in cheap, dusty mourning between their grey attires. Stephen saw his own image in cheap, dusty mournings between their grey attires. It's possible that could be there as they're walking along. Stephen saw his own image. He's seen his reflection. It could be in like a pool near the sea or something along them lines, or like a small little piece of water or something along them lines. In the bright salient instant, Stephen saw his own image in cheap, dusty mourning between their grey attires. Or he could be thinking, you know, I may end up looking like Mulligan sometime in the future. Um, something along them lines, I think. I have to think more about that. Next line. It's a wonderful tale, Haynes said, bringing them to a halt again. They stopped walking again. Obviously all about Hamlet still. Eyes pale as the sea the wind had freshened. Paler, firm and prudent, the sea's ruler, he gazed southward over the bay, empty save for the smoke plume of the mailboat, vague on the bright skyline, and a sail tacking by the Muglins. Excuse me. Eyes pale as the sea. Their eyes are pale as the sea. The wind had freshened. The wind. Just imagine the wind coming off the sea had freshened their eyes. Paler, firm and prudent. The sea's ruler. The sea's ruler. What would who the sea? The sea's ruler. Sea's ruler. The sea's ruler. The sea's ruler. Could possibly be the wind, I would say. Yeah, the wind could rule a bit of the sea. The sea's ruler, he gazed southward over the bay. Like one of them is looking over the bay. He gazed southward over the bay, empty. The sea, no, the bay is empty, save for the smoke plume of the mailboat, which was referred to earlier in our reading here. About the mailboat. So the smoke plume of the mailboat is still around. Vague, it's going off in the distance. Vague on the bright skyline, and a sail tacking by the Muglins. A sail. So there's probably a sailboat off in the distance as well, tacking by the Muglins. The Muglins could be like some cliffs way in the distance, possibly. Next line. I read a theological interpretation of it somewhere, he said, bemused. The Father and the Son idea, the Son striving to be atoned with the Father. Now, I'm not sure who's speaking there. Just think for a minute. I think it's Haynes that's speaking here. I read a theological interpretation of it somewhere, he said, bemused. The Father and the Son idea, the Son striving to be atoned with the Father. Next line. Buck Mulligan at once put on a broadly smiling face. He looked at them, his well-shaped mouth open happily, his eyes, from which he had suddenly withdrawn all shrewd sense, blinking with mad gaiety. He moved the doll's head to and fro. That's a great line. He moved the doll's head. Just imagine someone's head bobbling like a doll. Buck Mulligan's bobbing his head like. He moved the doll's head to and fro. These are lines that make Joyce a genius. He moved the doll's head to and fro, the brims of his Panama hat quivering. Great line there again. The brims of his Panama hat quivering, from the wind from the seas. They're quivering. And began to chant in a quiet, happy, foolish voice. I'm the queerest young fellow that ever you heard. My mother is a Jew, my father's a bird. With Joseph the Joiner I cannot agree. So here's to disciples and Calvary. He held up a forefinger of warning. Now Buck Mulligan just put up his finger in the air. And he continues. If anyone thinks that I ain't divine, he'll get no free drinks when I'm making the wine, but have to drink water and wish it were plain that I make when the wine becomes water again. So just Buck Mulligan is singing a kind of a made-up song. That's all that is. But it's kind of referring here to Joseph the Joiner. That will be Jesus' father, obviously. To here's to disciples in Calvary. And then he said, if someone thinks that I ain't divine, probably referring to Jesus, I would say, he'll get no free drinks when I'm making the wine. Yes, he's referring to Jesus. He'll get no free drinks when I'm making the wine, as Jesus turned water into wine. But have to drink water and wish it were plain, that I make when the wine becomes water again. So he's just singing a made up song. He's singing a made up song. He tugged swiftly at Stephen's ash plant. He tugged swiftly at Stephen's ash plant in farewell, and running forward to a brow of the cliff, fluttered his hands at his sides like fins or wings of one about to rise in the air, and chanted. Now to read that again. He tugged swiftly at Stephen's ash plant, like the man-made walking stick in farewell. And running forward to the brow of the cliff, fluttered his hands. You can just visualize someone about to run down, into the ocean from the cliff, and they would flutter their hands with the wind, like fins, or wings about to rise in the air, and chanted. Now he's singing again. Goodbye now, goodbye, write down all I said, and tell Tom, Dick and Harry I rose from the dead. What's bred in the bone cannot fail me to fly, and all of it's breezy. Goodbye now, goodbye. Just singing a made up song there. He capered before them down towards the 40-foot hole, fluttering his wing-like hands, leaping nimbly. Mercury's hat quivering in the fresh wind. Mercury's hat quivering in the fresh wind that bore back to them his brief bird-like cries. So basically, Buck Mulligan is heading down towards the water, and he's fluttering his wing-like hands, leaping nimbly. He's excited, obviously. Mercury's hat quivering, his hat is quivering with the wind that bore back to them his brief bird-like, and he's kind of, he's chanting. He's like crying he's making noises like a bird. Next line. Haynes, who had been laughing guardedly, walked on beside Stephen and said, "We oughtn't to laugh, I suppose. He's rather blasphemous. I'm not a believer myself, that is to say. Still his gaiety takes the harm out of it, somehow, doesn't it? What did he call it? Joseph the Joiner." So Haynes has said to Stephen Dallas, I don't really, he's more or less saying the song that Buck Mulligan was singing is blasphemous to God, obviously. We oughtn't to laugh, I suppose. He's rather blasphemous. I'm not a believer myself. He's saying he doesn't believe in God. That's to say. Still his gaiety takes the harm out of it, somehow, doesn't it? What did he call it? Joseph the Joiner. And next line. The Ballad of Joking Jesus, Stephen answered. So the name of that song is called The Ballad of Joking Jesus. Next line. O'Hain said, "You have heard it before." Next line. 3 times a day after meals, Stephen said dryly. So Buck Mulligan is always saying this ballad, this song. Next line. "You're not a believer, are you?" Haynes asked. So Haynes is asking Stephen, "You're not a believer. You're not a believer in God." "I mean a believer in the narrow sense of the word. Creation from nothing, and miracles, and a personal God." Next line. "There is only one sense of the word, it seems to me," Stephen said. "You're not a believer, are you?" Are you? Haynes asked. I mean a believer in the narrow sense of the word. So he says the narrow sense of the word. So Stephen does as answered. "There's only one sense of the word, it seems to me," Stephen said. Next line. So that's pretty self-explanatory. So I would say Haynes seems like he doesn't believe in God. Next line. "There's only one sense of the word, it seems to me," Stephen said. Haynes stopped to take out a smooth silver case in which twinkled a green stone. He sprang it open with his thumb and offered it. That's great writing. Haynes stopped to take out a smooth silver case, which is obviously a cigarette case, in which twinkled a green stone. Like at the handle, obviously, there's probably two green stones, I would say, in which twinkled a green stone, or maybe just one green stone. That's very great, very visual, that is. He stopped to go to smooth silver, and in which twinkled a green stone. He sprang it open, yes, with his thumb and offered it. Thank you, Stephen said, taking a cigarette. Next line. Haynes helped himself and snapped the case too. Snapped it. You can picture clearly the cigarette case snapping. He put it back in his side pocket and took from his waistcoat pocket a nickel tinderbox, sprang it open too, and having lit his cigarette, held the flaming spunk towards Stephen in the shell of his hands. Great writing there. Shell of his hands. So he took out like a lighter, I think, which at that time was probably like a nickel tinderbox. He put it back in his side pocket and took from his waistcoat pocket a nickel tinderbox, sprang it open too. Very visual. And having lit his cigarette, held the flaming spunk towards Stephen in the shell of his hands. You can really visualize his two hands, the shell of his hands, and he holding the light there. Next line. Yes, of course, he said as they went on again. Either you believe or you don't, isn't it? Personally, I couldn't stomach that idea of a personal God. You don't stand for that, I suppose. So they're just debating basically about God. Yes, of course, he said as they went on again. Either you believe in God or you don't believe, isn't it? Personally, I couldn't stomach. Who's speaking here now? Yes, of course, he said. I couldn't stomach the idea of a personal God. You don't stand for that as well. You behold in me, Stephen said with grim displeasure, a horrible example of free thought. You behold in me, Stephen said with grim, a horrible example of free thought. So, yeah, the line before that was spoken, I think, by Haynes. Either you believe or you don't. Personally, I couldn't stomach. So basically, the two of them are discussing what God there. Next line. He walked on, waiting to be spoken to. He walked on. This is actually Stephen de Dallas. He walked on, waiting to be spoken to, trailing his ash plant by his side. So his man-made walking stick, the ash plant, he's trailing it. It's touching the ground, and he's kind of just pulling it lightly. He's just holding on to it, and it's trailing by his side. Its ferrule followed lightly on the paths. Squealing at his heels. It's making a noise. My familiar after me, calling Stephen. My familiar after me calling Stephen. Now that, I think, is Buck Mulligan shouting up from he's obviously at the ocean, and he shouts up, my familiar after me calling Stephen. Is Stephen de Dallas. He's shouting with Stephen de Dallas. A wavering line along the path. Oh no, I'm wrong there now, actually. My familiar after me calling Stephen. He's referring to the ash plant, the walking stick there. My familiar after me calling Stephen. It's like this. If the ash plant could speak, it would be saying Stephen. That's possible too. The explanation. A wavering line along the path. So it's leaving a line along the path. The ash plant walking stick thing. They will walk on it tonight. People that are going to come to the round that where they are walking now. They will walk on it tonight on the wavering line that's been left in the path. They will walk on it tonight, coming here in the dark. They'll walk on that line. He wants that key. Now Stephen Dallas here is thinking. He's thinking. He wants that key. He's referring to Mulligan. Mulligan wants the key for the tower. It is mine. Stephen Dallas said, no, the key is mine. I paid the rent. Now I eat his salt bread. So obviously Buck Mulligan makes some kind of homemade salt bread, and Stephen Dallas said, now I eat his salt bread. Give him the key too. He said, no, I'm not going to give him the key. Give him the key too. All he will ask for, that was in his eyes. So obviously Buck Mulligan is trying to get the key off Stephen Dallas, probably on a number of occasions, and Stephen Dallas is reluctant to give him the key for the tower. Next line. After all, Haynes began, Stephen turned and saw that the cold gaze which had measured him was not all unkind. Stephen turned and saw that the cold gaze which had measured him was not all unkind. So Haynes is looking at Stephen basically. Next line. After all, I should think you were able to free yourself. You are your own master, it seems to me. Excuse me. This is Haynes speaking here. After all, I should think you are able to free yourself. You are your own master, it seems to me. What does Haynes mean by that? After all, I should think you are able to free yourself. You are your own master, it seems to me. Now, if I was to guess here now, Haynes, who is English, is more or less saying, after all, ye Irish people, I should think you're able to free yourself. You are your own master, it seems to me. You know, you should be able to get Ireland free, I think. Next line. I am the servant of two masters, Stephen said, an English and an Italian. Stephen also said this line. I am the servant of two masters, Stephen said, an English, which would be the English king or English queen, because England is ruled by Ireland at that time, and an Italian, which obviously I think would be the Pope, would be the ruler of the Catholic Church. I'm a servant of two masters. Next line. Italian, Haynes said. Next line. A crazy queen, old and jealous, kneel down before me. He's referring to the English queen, I think, here. A crazy queen, old and jealous, kneel down before me. Kneel down before me, meaning she's a queen, kneel down before me, bow, worship me. Next line. And a third, Stephen said, there is who wants me for odd jobs. And a third. So Stephen is saying, I have a third master. And a third, Stephen said, there is who wants me for odd jobs. Someone who wants him to do odd jobs is also his master, I think he's saying. Next line. Italian, Haynes said, what do you mean? Next line. The Imperial British State, Stephen answered, his colour rising, his face getting red, and the Holy Roman Catholic and Apostolic Church. Yeah, I think we got that right. Next line. Haynes detached from his underlip some fibres of tobacco before he spoke. So he's smoking, and some fibres of tobacco from his underlip. It's very, very, very visual writing there. Next line. I can understand that, he said calmly. This is Haynes speaking. I can understand that, he said calmly. An Irishman must think like that, I dare say. Which would be, that's England. I dare say that's a common expression in Ireland, in England. I know that from being in London myself. English people would use that expression a lot, I dare say. An Irishman must think like that, I dare say. We feel in England that we have treated you rather unfairly. It seems history is to blame. So Haynes is basically saying, we feel in England, we English people, we feel we have treated you Irish badly, rather unfairly. It seems history is to blame. History is to blame. Next line. The proud, potent titles clanged over Stephen's memory. The proud, potent titles, the title of the Queen and the title of the Pope, clanged over Stephen's memory. He's thinking about them. The triumph of their brazen bells. Et unam sanctram catholicam my pronunciation is a little off. I cannot pronounce Latin at all. So anyway, the next line. The slow growth and change of right. The slow growth and change of right and dogma, like his own rare thoughts, a chemistry of stars, symbol of the apostles in the Mass for Pope Mercurius. The voices blended, singing alone, loud in affirmation, and behind their chant the vigilant angel of the church, militant, disarmed, and menaced her heresiarchs, I can't pronounce that word either, a horde of heresies, fleeting with mitres awry. Photius and the brood of mockers of whom Mulligan was one, and Arius warring his life long upon the consubstantiality of the Son with the Father, and Valentine spurning Christ's terrene body, and the subtle African Hersias Sabellius, who held that the Father was himself his own Son, words Mulligan had spoken a moment since in mockery, to the stranger idle mockery. The void awaits surely all them that weave the wind, a menace, a disarming, and a worsening from those embattled angels of the church, Michael's host, who defend her even in the hour of conflict with their lances and their shields. Excuse me. Now that seemed very, very confusing, but my take on that is that this could possibly just be Stephen de Dallas thinking just any thoughts that are coming into his mind, just sporadically, any words that come into his mind, Joyce has put them all on paper, like just throw them on paper. So just visualize any person just thinking, like, 100 thoughts come into your mind at any 1 minute or second or whatever, and whatever they are had come into Stephen de Dallas' mind at that time, Joyce put on paper here, I think. The proud, potent titles clanged over Stephen's memory. Now, this is the Joyce, the writer, talking here. The proud, potent titles clanged over Stephen's memory. The triumph of their brazen bells. And then we're going to the Latin, et anam sanctum, so on. The slow growth and change of rite and dogma, like his own rare thoughts. The slow growth and change of rite and dogma, like his own rare thoughts. Like his own rare thoughts, a chemistry of stairs. Symbol of the apostles in the mass for Pope Marcellus. The voices blended, singing alone loud in affirmation, and behind their chant the vigilant angel of the church, militant, disarmed and menaced her heresiarchs, a horde of heresies fleeting with mitres awry. Photius and the brood of mockers, of whom Mulligan was one. Now, of whom Mulligan was, so Mulligan, we know here, just in the previous page, was mocking he's singing that kind of a mocking song, as they said, and the brood of mockers, of whom Mulligan was one. He's mocking God and the church. And Arius, warring his life long upon the consubstantiality of the Son with the Father, and Valentine, spurning Christ's terrene body, and the subtle African Hersias Sabellius, who held that the Father was himself his own Son, words Mulligan had spoken a moment since in mockery. Mulligan again comes into it. To the stranger, idle mockery. The void awaits surely all them that weave the wind. The void awaits surely all them that weave the wind. A menace, a disarming, and a worsening from those embattled angels of the church. Embattled angels of the church would mean the fallen angels, I think. Michael's host, which Michael the Archangel, who is the leader of the Catholic Church, I think, defender of the church. Michael's host, who defend her even in the hour of conflict. So Michael will defend the church no matter what. Michael's host, who defend her even in the hour of conflict with their lances and their shield, because a lot of these archangels are shown with lances and shields and so on and forth. Here, prolonged applause. Zut nam le dium. Here. Now, yeah, I just think that's possibly thoughts that Stephen de Dallas is thinking, in his mind, and Joyce put them on paper. Or it could possibly be Joyce just putting down his thoughts, at that time and putting them on the paper. But it's more likely Stephen Dallas's thoughts, I would think. Could be commingled with some of Joyce's thoughts too, just thrown on the page. Because Joyce does this all the time in Ulysses. He deliberately tries to slip away and lose the reader all the time. You just have to stay with him. He's full of humour, Joyce. Here, last line. Here, prolonged applause, zut nam le diem. But even though Joyce is always trying to slip away and confuse the reader as much as possible, he never leaves without. He leaves plenty of clues. Now, for example, no, not just referring to this, but often in this book he'll throw in one or two or three lines, and you couldn't make head nor tail of them in a million years. And then he'll give he'll give the explanation like a page later. So the thing about reading Ulysses is not to give up, just to stay with it. And that is my hope, basically, for all readers of Ulysses. Is, I mean, I'm giving pointers here. My hope would be people would, after listening to this audio, would go back and read the first 20 pages themselves, and that's when the imagery and really becomes alive. And you can just read brilliant writing. So next line. Of course I'm a Britisher, Haynes said, and I feel as one. I don't want to see my country fall into the hands of German Jews either. That's our national problem, I'm afraid, just now. So Haynes is speaking here. Of course I'm a Britisher, I'm from Britain, Haynes said, and I feel as one. I don't want to see my country fall in the hands of German Jews, the Germans, either. That's our national problem, I'm afraid, just now. Two men stood at the verge of the cliff, watching. Businessman, boatman. Two men stood at the verge of the cliff. So Stephen Adalis and Haynes are standing at the edge of the cliff, watching businessman, boatman. Now, businessman, boatman. Yeah, it's very hard to mean. What does he mean by businessman, boatman? But I think if we read on, we'll find out exactly what Joyce is talking about. Businessman, boatman. Now, could be some businessman at the water's edge. A boatman, someone tending to the boat. Businessman, boatman. Next line. She's making for Bullock Harbour. They're obviously referring to a ship. She's watching businessman, boatman. So maybe it's a businessman on a boat. She's making for Bullock Harbour. Excuse me, they're obviously referring to a boat here. She's making for Bullock Harbour. The boat is going towards a harbour called Bullock Harbour. The next line. The boatman nodded towards the north of the bay with some disdain. The boatman nodded towards the north of the bay with some disdain. Next line. There's 5 fathoms out there, he said. It'll be swept up that way when the tide comes in about 1. It's 9 days today. Let me just think for a second. Okay, there's 5 fathoms out there, he said. No, I'm not really sure who's speaking here now. There's 5 fathoms. That's how deep the water is out there. It'll be swept up that way. When the tide comes in about 1. It's 9 days today. Now, if I was to guess, I remember when I read this first, it's 9 days today. I think when somebody drowns after 9 days, they come back to the surface. So possibly somebody drowned here, and there could be a boat out searching for the body, and there's 9 days is up today, and the person on the boat could be saying there's 5 fathoms out there. He said it'll be swept up that way. Over there, the body will probably come up. When the tide comes in around 1, it's 9 days today. The man that was drowned. So here it is. Yes. The man that was drowned. A sail veering about the blank bay, waiting for a swollen bundle to bop up, roll over to the sun, a puffy face, salt white. Here I am. So yes, now, so that's the sailboat. It was actually mentioned earlier on. So this sailboat is going around sailing around looking for this body, it seems. The man that was drowned, a sail veering about the blank bay. the blank bay. There's nothing else on the bay, only the sailboat. Uh, the mailboat must have disappeared. A sail veering about the blank bay, waiting, so it's searching around this a sailing boat. A sail veering about the blank bay, waiting for a swollen bundle to pop up. That's the body. Roll over to the sun. When it pops up, it'll roll over to the sun. A puffy face. The face will be puffy, obviously. Salt white from the sea and so on. Here I am. Joyce's humour again. Here I am. They followed the winding path down to the creek. This is Buck Mulligan and Stephen Dallas. They followed the winding path down to the creek. Buck Mulligan stood on a stone. He stood on a stone beside the water's edge, obviously, in shirt sleeves, his unclipped tie rippling over his shoulder. Okay, so his tie is flung over his shoulder. Great imagery. A young man clinging to a spur of rock near him moved slowly, frog-wise, his green legs in the deep jelly of the water. That's fabulous writing there. I have to read the paragraph again. They followed the winding path down to the creek. Buck Mulligan stood on a stone in short sleeves, his unclipped tie rippling over his shoulder. It's rippling, it's over, and the wind is whipping it. A young man clinging to a spur of rock. So there's a young man in the ocean, obviously, very close to the edge of the water, clinging to a spur of rock. Imagine a rock and a little bit of the rock sticking up. Spur of rock. Visualize a saddle with like a cowboy would hold on to a piece of the saddle, like a rock. It's a rock with a little something jutting up where you could just hold on with your hand. A young man clinging to a spur of rock near him moved slowly. He moved slowly, frog-wise. He moved slowly with frog-wise, with his green legs in the deep jelly of the water. His green legs, so his legs look green under the ocean or under the sea. In the deep jelly, so in the deep jelly of the water, it's like it does look like jelly if you're looking underneath the water there. Great writing. Next line. Is the brother with you, Malachi? Is the brother with you, Malachi? So, is the brother with you, Malachi? So that's obviously the young man that's speaking here. A young man clinging to a spur rock. Is the brother with you? So he's asking Malachi Mulligan, is your brother with you? And Malachi Mulligan Buck Mulligan answers, down in Westmeath. He's down in Westmeath with the Bannons, with a family called the Bannons. He's staying with a family called the Bannons. Still there, as the young man says to Buck Mulligan, is he still there? I got a card from Bannon. I got a card, like a postcard from this Bannon family. Says he found a sweet young thing down there. Photo girl, he calls her. So, this young man in the ocean has said to Malachi Mulligan, is the brother with you, Malachi? And Malachi Mulligan said, no, he's down in Westmeath. He's staying with the Bannon family. Still there. Is he still staying with them? I got a card from Bannon, meaning the father, Bannon. He's saying that Buck Mulligan's brother, he found a sweet young thing. That's an Irish way of saying a sweet young thing. It's a real nice looking girl. He said he found a sweet young thing down there. Photo girl, he calls her. She's a photo girl. Photo girl. I don't know why he calls her a photo girl. Photo girl could be photogenic. Something on them lines. She could work with photography. Let's see. Next line. Snapshot. Brief exposure. Next line. Buck Mulligan sat down to unlace his boots. An elderly man shot up near the spur of rock, a blowing red face. He scrambled up by the stones, water glistening on his petty and on its garland of grey hair, water riding over his chest and pawns and spilling jets out of his black sagging loincloth. That's just absolutely brilliant writing there by Joyce. Now, Buck Mulligan sat down to unlace his boots. An elderly man shot up. So an old man was in swimming and he shot up out of the water. An elderly man shot up near the spur of rock. He, he come up just beside him. An early man shot up near the spur of rock beside him, a glowing red face. So his face is all red. You can great image there. A glowing red face. He scrambled up by the stones. And this person that come out of the way scrambled up by the stones. He scrambled up by the stones. He's climbing the stones. Water glistening on his patty, on his bald head, I think. Water glistening on his patty, and on its garland of grey hair, a little bit of hair. Water riling over his chest and paunch, stomach, right, and spilling jets out of his black, sagging loincloth. Water coming out of his loincloth. I have an idea who Joyce is talking about here. If I was to guess, Joyce is poking fun here, and I would say this elderly man could possibly be a Catholic priest, and Joyce is poking a little bit of fun at him here. An early man shot up near the spur of rock, blowing red face. He scrambled up by the stones, water on his patty and on his grey hair, water riling over his chest and spitting out jets of his sagging loincloth. Next line. Buck Mulligan made way for him to scramble past, and glancing at Haynes and Stephen, crossed himself piously with his thumbnail at brow and lips and breastbone. Yes, I think this old man definitely is a Catholic priest. And Buck Mulligan has blessed himself. Buck Mulligan made way for him to scramble past, and glancing at Haynes and Stephen, crossed himself. He blessed himself piously with his thumbnail at brow and lips and breastbone. So he's blessed himself. And then next line. Seymour's back in town, the young man said, grasping again his spur of rock. Now this is the young man that's holding on to the spur of rock while he's still in the water. Seymour's back in town. Some person called Seymour's back in town, the young man said, grasping again his spur of rock. Chucked medicine and going in for the army. Chucked medicine. He was obviously doing medicine, studying medicine. He's chucked it. He's given it up, and going in for the army. He's going joining the army. Next line. Go to God, Buck Mulligan said. So Buck Mulligan obviously would know him because he's a medical student. Go to God. No way, Buck Mulligan said. Next line. Going over next week to stew. You know that red Carlisle girl, Lily. Going over next week to stew. Going over next week. Probably going over to England next week to stew, to train maybe. You know that red Carlisle girl, Lily. Next line. Buck Mulligan said, yes. Spooning with him last night on the pier. The father is rattle with money. Spooning with him last night on the pier. Spooning with him last night on the pier. To read that back again. Going over next week to stew. You know that red Carlisle girl, Lily? Yes. Spooning with him last night on the pier. The two of them could be romantically involved somewhere at the pier last night. The father, the Carlisle girl's, Lily's father, is rotten with money. He's rotten with money. He has a lot of money. He's wealthy. Next line. Is she up the pole? Buck Mulligan said, is she up the pole? That's an Irish expression for, is she pregnant? Next line. And the young man that's holding on to spur of water said, better ask Seymour that. Next line. Seymour, and then Buck Mulligan said, Seymour, a bleeding officer, Buck Mulligan said. An officer in the army. Next line. He nodded to himself as he drew off his trousers and stood up saying tritely, red-headed women buck like goats. Red-headed women buck like goats. So Buck Mulligan stood up and he said, red-headed women buck like goats. Now, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out what he's really referring to there. Red-headed women buck like goats. Next line. He broke off in alarm, feeling his side under his flapping shirt. So he's still wearing his shirt. He broke off in alarm, feeling his side under his flapping shirt. His shirt is flapping from the wind, from the sea. My 12th rib is gone, he said. I'm the Ubermischt, whatever, I don't know what that means. It's a Latin term. Toothless Kinch, and I the Superman. My 12th rib is gone, he cried. I am the Toothless Kinch, and I the Superman. So now he's referring to himself as Superman because the shirt is bobbing and he's waving his hands. I am Superman, and Toothless Kinch. Kinch is like a monster. Toothless Kinch, like Frankenstein or something, and I'm Superman. Toothless Kinch, and I the Superman. Next line. He struggled out of his shirt and flung it behind him to where his clothes lay. Next line. Are you going in here, Malachi? Malachi, this is the young person in the water. This holding onto the spur of the rock, says to Malachi Mulligan. Are you going in here? Are you coming in here where I am? And Buck Mulligan says, yes, make room in the bed. Yes, I'm going in there, make room in the bed there. I'm going in beside you in the water. Next line. The young man shoved himself backward through the water and reached the middle of the creek in 2 long, clean swimming strokes. Haynes sat down on a stone, smoking. Next line. Are you not coming in? Buck Mulligan asked. Later on, Haynes said, not on my breakfast. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Buck Mulligan says, are you not coming in? Are you not coming for a swim, Haynes? Later on, Haynes said, not on my breakfast. I wouldn't swim while I have my breakfast. After having my breakfast, next line, Stephen turned away. I'm going, Mulligan, he said. So, next line, give us that key, Kinch, Buck Mulligan said, to keep my chimish flat. So Buck Mulligan asks Kinch, Stephen did ask for the key again. Stephen handed him the key. Buck Mulligan laid it across his heaped clothes. His heaped clothes are all folded up, heaped clothes or whatever, and he put the key on top of it. And 2p, he said, for a pint. Throw it there. And give me the loan of 2p. Give me the loan of like 20p, 20 cents, whatever. Give me the loan of 2p for a pint to buy a pint of beer. Throw it there. Next line. Stephen threw 2 pennies on the soft heap of clothes. Stephen threw 2 pennies on the soft heap. Dressing, undressing, Buck Mulligan erect, with giant hands before him, said solemnly, he who stealeth from the poor lendeth to the Lord. Thus spake Zarathustra. Let's read that again. And 2p, he said, for a pint. Throw it there. Stephen threw 2 pennies on the soft heap. Dressing, undressing. Buck Mulligan erect, he's standing up, he's about to dive in. With giant hands before him, he's joining his hands, he's about to visualize someone going in for a dive. With giant hands before him, said solemnly, he who, and this Buck Mulligan speaking, he who stealeth from the poor lendeth to the Lord. Thus spake Zarathustra. He's just having a bit of fun, that's all. There's a great line here coming up. His plump body plunged. Buck Mulligan dived into the water. His plump body plunged. Next line. We'll see you again, Haynes said, turning as Stephen walked up the path and smiling at Wild Irish. So Haynes has said to Buck Mulligan, we'll see you again. We'll see you later on. Haynes said, and he turned towards Stephen, turning as Stephen walked up the path. So Stephen is walking away and smiling at Wild Irish. They're referring to Buck Mulligan as Wild Irish. He's a Wild Irish person. Next line. Horn of a bull, hoof of a horse, smile of a Saxon. That's just a brilliant line of writing there. Horn of a bull, hoof of a horse, smile of a Saxon. If you really think about that, horn of a bull would be dangerous if you're hit by it. Hoof of a horse would be dangerous if you could be deadly even if you got kicked by it. Smile of a Saxon is equally the smile of an English person um, could be equally as deadly. So that's what Joyce is referring to there. Horn of a bull. Joyce is just having a bit of, he's just having a bit of humour, like that's all, a bit of fun. Horn of a bull could be deadly. A hoof of a horse could be deadly, obviously. Smile of a Saxon, smile of an English person could be deadly too. Don't trust him. Joyce is just, he's having a bit of fun, that's all I think. Next line. The ship, Buck Mulligan cried, 12:30. So there, that has been confirmed. The ship, Buck Mulligan cried, 12:30. So earlier on, remember we read about the ship, and we're guessing that the ship was a pub. So there is confirmed. Yes, the ship is a pub. The ship, Buck Mulligan cried, 12:30. He's more saying, "I'll meet ye at." Buck Mulligan said to them, shouted out, "I'll meet ye at 12:30 in the ship. I'll meet ye in a pub called the Ship at 12:30." The ship, Buck Mulligan cried, 12:30. So good, Stephen said. Good. Yeah, we'll be there at 12:30. He walked along the upward curving path. Great imagery. Lil ata rutila terma cum some we got 3 lines there of Latin again. Cannot pronounce it, of course. The priest's grey nimbus in a niche where he dressed discreetly. I will not sleep here tonight. Home also I cannot go. So yes, that elderly man that come up from the sea, yes, was a Catholic priest. Just want to read that back in. An elderly man shot up near the spur of the rock, a glowing red face. That's what I'm talking about. Now we have the confirmation here again. The priest's grey nimbus in a niche where he dressed discreetly. The priest's grey nimbus. Now, nimbus, I think, is part of a Catholic priest's garments. Don't think it's a collar. I think it might be the vest. 1 second. This microphone is after slipping. To the best of my knowledge, a nimbus is something a priest will wear. It's a part of his clothing, I think. Or it's something along them lines. The priest's grey nimbus in a niche where he dressed discreetly. So the old man that come up with the glowing red face, yes, was a priest. So now he's dressing discreetly. I will not sleep here tonight. Home also I cannot go. I will not sleep here tonight. Home also I cannot go. I don't understand that really, that line. Next line. A voice sweetened and sustained called to him from the sea. A voice sweetened. The priest's grey nimbus in a niche where he dressed discreetly. I will not sleep here tonight. Home also I cannot go. A voice sweetened and sustained called to him from the sea. Turning the curve, he waved his hand. It called back. A sleek brown head, a seal's, fair out on the water round your supper. Now, this could just be a seal in the distance. A voice sweetened and sustained. Just imagine the seal after eating a lot of fish, sweetened and sustained, called to him, like Flipper the dolphin would call. Maybe the seal gave a call from the sea, and the priest turned, he waved his hand, for a bit of fun. The seal called again, like a seal noise. A sleek brown head, a seal's, fair out in the water round. It's just great imagery, that. Usurper. That could just be just an ordinary seal, it makes its seal sound, and the priest waves back, and seal makes another seal sound. That's a possibility. It's probably the most logical explanation to that. Now, the lines previously, I will not sleep here tonight, home also I cannot go. I don't understand what them lines mean at all. Now, if you could find out, or if you could figure out them lines, the priest's grey nimbus in an inch where he dressed discreetly, I will not sleep here tonight, home also I cannot go. Now that would unlock the next lines. Now there's another possible explanation to this. Um, I'm not really sure, but it's not beyond Joyce to infer this or imply this at all. Uh, for example, let's just say the priest was like a fallen priest. Um, a voice sweetened and sustained. Just for example, let's say he was meeting his lady friend out on the water, and previously they were hugging and kissing in the water. A voice sweetened and sustained. That's the lady called to him. She called to him as he was leaving. See you later, whatever. Turning the curve, he waved his hand. He waved back to her. It called again. The voice, the lady. Now, if you think about a lady in the water with long hair, wet, it would remind you of a sleek brown head, like a seal's, fair out in the water, round. It would look like that, I think. Usurper. Now that is a possibility to that. That's a possible explanation to that as well. Or it just could be a seal. It's a toss-up, I think. But it's not beyond Joyce to infer that at all, and imply that. It's just something that it is possible. I don't know. I'll have to give that a lot of thought, I think. Well, I'll definitely be thinking about that. I will not sleep here tonight home also. I cannot go. But that's what made Joyce such a brilliant writer also, was all the hidden meanings in his writings. And, it's a challenge to the reader trying to figure out what is he really talking about as such. And that's the perfect example there now. But the imagery is fabulous there. A sleek brown head, a seal's, fair out in the water round, usurper. Excuse me. That's that's the greatness of Joyce as well. Having to stop and look at the lines and trying to figure out. It's like Ulysses is it's one big puzzle really. It's like a huge crossword puzzle. So it's just fabulous writing overall. Well, we're at the end of 20 pages now, so yeah, that is a possible explanation to that, alright, but it could just be a seal's head. It's hard to know. Joyce, of course, doesn't give us a huge amount of clues, but there's definitely a huge hidden meaning behind all that. Knowing Joyce's writing, it's not, Joyce's writing is not like as simple as it seems. There's a lot of hidden meanings all the time, such. But you just need when reading Ulysses, you need to use your imagination, and you need a pretty good imagination to figure out what Joyce is talking about. There's an illusion out there that you need to be like a rocket scientist or a brain surgeon to understand Ulysses. That's not true at all. To understand Ulysses and understand Joyce, you need a good imagination. A good visual imagination is the number one thing you need. Basically, if you can read an ordinary newspaper, which most people I think nowadays can, you can understand Ulysses as good, and depending on your imagination, much better than a lot of academics out there. There's no doubt about that. I just want to stop here a minute. What? And sustained call to him from this. So yeah, briefly I had to stop there. Someone came to the door, so I'm back again. So as I said, basically about reading Ulysses, if you can read an everyday ordinary newspaper, you can understand Ulysses as good as anybody out there. If you possess, one of the main things would be a good imagination, basically. So, and it is a shame really that there's such an illusion out there, and a lot of people I know would be afraid to even attempt to read Ulysses because they think it's so, highfalutin and so on and so forth. Not at all. Joyce was one of the most down-to-earth writers ever in the history of the English language. He was all for Joyce was. He was a champion of the working class person all the time, and that's in his writing all the time. And it's a shame that a lot of ordinary people don't read Ulysses, and because of that illusion that's out there. A lot of people are even afraid to attempt to read Ulysses, and they're missing out on the greatest writer possibly of all times, and that's a shame. But so I'd like to stop there now again. Just returning to that paragraph again. The priest grey nimbus in a niche where he dressed discreetly. I will not sleep here tonight. Home also I cannot go. After looking up the word nimbus, which is a halo, and this is actually a day later, there is a possibility that this could be, this might be able to explain that paragraph. But again, I'm not sure, but I want to go try and have another stab at it, as I say, or another go at it. Okay, starting again. The priest grey nimbus. Now, some people say that's the garland of grey hair, which was mentioned earlier on, but I don't think so. I think the priest grey nimbus, his halo, right? If this is a fallen priest, right, who's having an affair with a woman, possibly a married woman, the priest's grey nimbus in a niche where he dressed discreetly. It could just be a hairpiece, like a hairpiece. The priest's grey nimbus, which Joyce is having a bit of fun here. He's saying the priest's grey nimbus, which his halo would be if he's bald, and we already know he's bald from the previous page. The priest grey, that he has a hairpiece. The priest grey nimbus in a niche where he dressed discreetly. That would be his halo, as Joyce is inferring. Now this line was a bit bamboozling, but sometimes with Joyce, the clues are there, and sometimes they're kind of staring you in the face. So here goes on. The priest grey nimbus in a niche where he dressed discreetly. The priest grey nimbus hairpiece, for example, grey. I will not sleep here tonight. The priest is thinking, I will not sleep here tonight. That would imply that he slept there last night. I will not sleep here tonight. Home also I cannot go. That's a bit vague. I'm not sure about home also I cannot go. I will not sleep here tonight. So if the priest slept there last night, he got up in the morning, he went for his morning swim with his lady friend. The priest grey nimbus in a niche where he dressed, I will not sleep here tonight, meaning that the two of them slept there the previous night. Home also I cannot go. A voice sweetened and sustained, we just said that's the lady out in the water, called to him from the sea. Turning the curve, he waved his hand. He waved to her. It called back. The voice called back. See you later. Whatever. And she looks like a sleek brown head. A sleek brown head, a seal's fair out on the water round. Usurper. Now, usurper, the priest is a usurper. He's taken the place of the woman's husband. That is a possible explanation to that paragraph. I'm not sure about that, but it's definitely something to think about. and if it is, it's just absolutely fantastic writing. It's just brilliant writing. Another thing that made Joyce a brilliant writer was his ability to say things without saying them. Now, this is all hidden here. It seems very, it doesn't seem much at all, but when you uncover the layers, you find out this is what Joyce is really saying. No, but I'm not 100% sure about that. I'm going to keep thinking about that anyways, but that's the possibility what that could all be about. And it's definitely not beyond Joyce to, with his humour, and to throw that in there, So I just want to sign off now again.